If you have a movie in the works, then you'd better stay away from hiring these 15 actors. And here's why. Nicolas Cage. Talk about box office bombs. And this Lord of War protagonist takes the cake and then some. This guy went from getting an Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas to starring in a slew of video-on-demand bombs. Even Renfield, a 2023 comedy horror movie that required him to permanently alter his dentition, only had a box office gross of $25.6 million, whereas $65 million had been spent putting it together. Think that's bad? The Runner, released in 2015, currently has a box office gross of $20,106 and a budget of $4 million. So what is Nicolas Cage's problem? Well, for one, he overacts, and audiences aren't always fond of that. And secondly, he used to have a very severe spending problem. Mr. Cage reportedly blew a $150 million fortune on what he says was a real estate bubble, and once owned 15 houses, including a haunted mansion. This guy even shelled out $150,000 for a pet octopus and bought a dino skull for nearly $300K. His former business manager accused him of severely living beyond his means and buying houses, high-end cars, yachts, and jets like he wanted to set a record. The financial problems of Nicolas Cage meant he had to sell off a lot of properties to stay afloat, and couldn't be all that picky about movie roles. He's debt-free now, but his box office malaise has yet to end. If you think Nick is a movie flop, stick around to see the actor that turned down Superman and Batman roles and the insane reason you won't want to hire him later in this video. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome actor videos. Jennifer Love Hewitt. This former Disney child star got famous mostly off her performance in the I Know What You Did Last Summer horror movies. And she has a Golden Globe nomination plus a quartet of studio albums to her name. Now, Jennifer has been in 15 movies since 2000. Nearly all were panned by critics, and only 3 could be considered profitable. In 1999, she starred in The Suburbans alongside Will Ferrell, and this work of art scooped up a grand total of $11,130 at the box office. Just like the Jerry Maguire actor coming up, who pulled $13,229 on a budget of a $3.5 million movie. And in 2007, Delgion, the animated movie she lent her voice to, had a heartbreaking opening day, earning just $237. Back in 2011, an analysis of her past movies resulted in her being ranked the worst reviewed actress of her generation, with Chuck Norris scooping the worst reviewed actor tag. But then Jennifer always owned her fame and movie roles to her beauty and status as a sex symbol, rather than her acting talents. Age is catching up to her. Other, more beautiful starlets have been outshining her, and most teens of this era do not know or care who she is. Jennifer Love Hewitt has had better success on TV shows than in movie land, and her recent pivot to that niche seems like a wise choice. Taylor Lautner. A while back, everyone could not stop talking about the Twilight Saga series, which had scenes like this. The series inspired memes beyond counting and introduced a slew of stars that fans drooled over on the daily. Taylor Lautner was a Twilight main cast, and people raved over his physique, with this catapulting him to near the top of People magazine's most amazing body list. But he has so far turned out to be a one-hit wonder who couldn't hack it outside the protective aegis of the Twilight franchise. The last Twilight movie was in 2012, and he has since then only appeared in 5 movies, and all but one were box office disasters that were slated by critics. The sole movie that made back its budget and then some was Grown Ups 2, and Taylor only had a bit part in it. But he sure had a main role in The Ridiculous Sick, a Western action comedy with a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So what is wrong with this guy? Lack of talent and a capful of rage. Taylor, sadly, has little in the way of range or acting talent. That's so sad to see, especially when other Twilight stars like Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart are doing comparatively well and impressing critics with their performances on the big screen. Just last year, Pattinson took on the role of Batman in The Batman, Man, a movie that pulled in $771 million on a $200 million budget. Rotten Tomatoes was sufficiently impressed to give the movie an approval rating of 85%, with Pattinson's performance being lauded. Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal is many things: actor, musician, martial artist, law enforcement personnel, special envoy, bully, liar, loser, and flop. His 2 studio albums were anything but hits, and his movie career has been essentially dead since Under Siege. He seems to have no sense of humor, as was spectacularly showcased during an infamous Saturday Night Live hosting gig in 1991, and precious little in the way of talent. Seagal has a reputation for bossing folks around on set and beating them up for fun. John Leguizamo very recently said that he hated the above-the-law actor, calling him washed up and a horrible human, with the seed of animosity being sown in 1996 during rehearsal on the set of Executive Decision. According to John, Seagal made a late appearance, announced he was in charge, and then slammed John with a blow that knocked the wind out of him for daring to laugh at the absurdity of the whole thing. Steven Seagal has been severally accused and sued for sexual harassment and sexual assault. He's also infamous for his outsized ego and endless lies, plus his routine brutality with stuntmen, and was famously choked unconscious on set, subsequently losing control of his bowels. Here's Ronda Rousey talking about repeating that feat.
Pretty tired and slow, that kick. I mean, seriously, the guy doesn't have a very good track record.
Seagal also has controversial opinions and affiliations that we are not prepared to get into. And in 2017, Ukraine banned him from its territory. This direct-to-video king has been blacklisted by every major Hollywood studio and will never again be a top star. Lindsay Lohan. The Mean Girls and Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen star has been scarce on the big screen lately. She got married last year, is expecting a boy child anytime soon, and has only been in 10 movies since 2010. Lindsay Lohan, back in the early years of this century, endlessly did stuff that got studio executives pissed off at her. Frequent erratic behavior, constant drunkenness on set, and more was common too, with a studio executive going so far to label her as irresponsible and unprofessional. Lohan is also infamous for her substance abuse issues and run-ins with the law, and you can see her crybaby act in court here.
I never do anything like that. I was working.
She is improbably difficult to work with, and it does not help that the majority of movie critics in the last few years have failed to see enough talent and dedication to her roles to enable them to praise her on-screen performances. This lady is reportedly blacklisted by some Hollywood studios, and there are some high-profile actors who, as a matter of principle, refuse to star in any movie she's given a role in. Lindsay Lohan appears to have cleaned up her act, but her movies still don't make money. Hayden Christensen. This guy has been Anakin Skywalker multiple times in the Star Wars franchise and has swung lightsabers more than most of us have gobbled pepperoni pizzas. The Star Wars series has been the biggest earning movies he has ever starred in, with this guy having a funny habit of headlining box office bombs. Jumper was a happy exception, although it only managed to scrape up a 15% Rotten Tomatoes rating. Awake, on the other hand, made $32.7 million on an $8.6 million budget, which isn't bad at all. He can be seen here getting on the bad side of Samuel L. Jackson in Jumper. But this guy has been nominated a quartet of times for the all but prestigious Golden Raspberry Award, and that's enough indication that he's not Oscar material. Hayden hasn't been in a movie since 2019 and focuses on starring in TV shows and taking care of his beloved farm. It does not appear that he's called it quits with Hollywood, but Hollywood sure has had enough of one of its formerly promising stars. Jessica Alba. Jessica Marie Alba was all of 19 when she got the lead role in Dark Angel, a critically acclaimed sci-fi drama that has spawned books and video games aplenty. And this was followed by appearances in Sin City, The Fantastic Four, and Machete series. She's got moves too, as can be seen in this video. This ravishing blonde has a head for business and founded The Honest Company in 2011, with the consumer goods firm having a valuation of over $500 million by February 2022, and also having a reputation for not being truthful about the stuff that's in what it sells. But we're not here to dig into what a dishonest company she's been running. Want to make a movie with Jessica Alba or put her in a show? Well, that really wouldn't be advisable. From 1999 to now, She's been in 19 TV shows and only once was in a main cast, which tells you all you need to know about how much regard the folks in show business have for her. And of the 13 movies she's featured in from 2013 to present, only one did well enough at the box office to earn back its budget and then some. Even Machete Kills, despite the buzz that accompanied it, the gore it was splattered with, and the $20 million it was made with, could only pull in $17.5 million. Ouch. Orlando Bloom. Orlando here is mostly famous for his work in Lord of the Rings and the Pirates of the Caribbean franchises, and he's an old hand on the stage. His first movie role was in 1997. And a few years later, he snagged the part of Legolas, and the rest, as they say around the hills and dales, is history. This fella is currently hitched to Katy Perry, and she's been frank in admitting his faults here.
He leaves floss all around the house.
Age 20, Orlando Bloom fell 3 floors, with the fall resulting in an injured spine, and his injuries being so severe that he was initially told he would never walk again. But he sure has been doing a lot of walking and running on the big screen. So why is Orlando Bloom in this video? Precisely because he does not have the pull he used to. Apart from The Hobbit and Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, the movies he's been in for the last few years have had a hard time making back their budget. Even The Outpost, a war film with a very impressive 93% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, could only manage a gross of $2.3 million on a $5 million budget. Sure, this guy has a trio of movies set for release later this year, but there's no assurance that any of them will be the kind of mega hit that will announce his glorious return back to the blockbuster category in Tinseltown. Elizabeth Berkeley. Elizabeth is a bit of an oldie, and not too many movie fans may be aware of her existence. She's been in Saved by the Bell, Baywatch, Jack and Jill, Point Break, Showgirls, and Women in Trouble, and was never an A-list actor or one with many roles as the lead. Lizzie is one of those actors whose face you can often recognize, but whose name can't be placed till the credits are rolling. She's mostly remembered for Showgirls, an erotic drama that flopped hard at the box office, despite having questionable scenes in space. But that movie subsequently acquired a cult following and grossed more than $100 million from video rentals. Elizabeth Berkley's performance in Showgirls was panned to such an extent that it permanently affected her career. Soon after the movie's release and the backlash that followed, Elizabeth's agent dropped her, and other agents made themselves scarce. That movie also got a record 13 nominations at the 1995 Golden Raspberry Awards, and won in 7 of the categories it was nominated for. Showgirls seriously derailed Elizabeth's career, and she has since then been relegated to the bit part niche in movie land. Cuba Gooding Jr. Remember Boys in the Hood, A Few Good Men, Jerry Maguire, Men of Honor, The Fighting Temptations, and The People vs. O.J. Simpson? Those were all solid movies that had Cuba Gooding Jr. in the main cast, and he used to be a highly regarded star who looked set to have multiple Academy Awards sitting pretty on his shelf by the time he was weak-kneed and gray-haired. Cuba Gooding showed off his breakdancing skills in the closing ceremonies of the 1984 Summer Olympics and studied martial arts for a few years before deciding that the acting world had a greater need for a fella like him. Boys in the Hood was his first lead role, and the movie turned out to be a surprise and major success. From there, he had no problem finding roles that fans and critics shouted themselves hoarse in approval of. But his career slumped from the early years of this century, and he was soon in boatloads of direct-to-video movies and scooping up Worst Actor nominations. Of the 40-plus movies that Gooding has starred in since the year 2002, slightly more than 10 were box office successes. And if that's not the very definition of a flop, we don't know what else is. Harold, a comedy about a teen with early male pattern baldness, is easily his worst performing movie, grossing $13,229 on a budget of $3.5 million. Talk about underwhelming. In 2019, the Jerry Maguire actor was arrested for forcibly groping women, with around 30 ladies eventually coming forward to say that he had behaved very inappropriately with them. He eventually pled guilty to some charges and was sentenced to 6 months of counseling. Given the times we're in, it is all but certain that his career is kaput. Julia Stiles. Magic was never our thing, but we might have to change our minds since Julia Stiles kind of magically disappeared off the big screen. The 10 Things I Hate About You and Save the Last Dance star peaked late last century and has never come close to reaching the heights she did then. She's gotten married, currently has 2 kids, and might not star in a movie or TV show this year. So what's up with Julia? Well, for one, her acting skills leave a lot to be desired, and this, in turn, usually gets critics into a feeding frenzy. Also, the late 1990s were a different era, and there are plenty of Instagram and TikTok teens who can't pick Julia Stiles out of a lineup if the fate of the galaxy depended on it. And it doesn't help that in a world like this, she still refuses to do dirty stuff on screen. Her lack of skills and relevance has resulted in the stagnation of her career, and whether that's temporary or permanent remains to be seen. How the mighty of Mona Lisa smile fame have fallen. Topher Grace. Christopher John Grace, otherwise known as Topher Grace, is an actor who's best known for that 70s show, that 90s show, Spider-Man 3, Interstellar, and War Machine. He was even in Mona Lisa Smile with Julia Stiles. Now, Topher sure has had a great career, but you could say his movies have not been exactly profitable, and one of them even grossed less than $8,000 on a budget of almost $1 million. Of the 20-plus odd movies that Topher Grace starred in from the year 2007, only 6 could be considered box office hits, and they include Interstellar, Breakthrough, Black Klansman, Predators, Valentine's Day, and Spider-Man 3. With a record like that, his name for sure ain't gonna be atop any list of actors we want to hire for a shoot. You can watch Topher on Netflix doing his best on that 90s show, and on ABC playing the lead role in Home Economics. And we better note that he has only had main roles in 2 of the TV shows he's been on since Y2K. Rebecca Gayheart. Rebecca initially took up modeling before pivoting and focusing on acting. She effectively parlayed the fame she got from modeling into a viable acting career, and by 1995 was in Beverly Hills 90210. But she has only had bit parts in movies and a main role in a single TV show. Her career effectively ended in June 2001 when she knocked down and killed a kid on a Los Angeles street who was chasing a soccer ball. The repercussions of this tragic accident are still felt to this day. Gayheart paid for the medical and funeral expenses of the child, pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter charges, and was given 3 years of probation. She was also fined and sentenced to 750 hours of community service. The parents of the kid filed suit, with an out-of-court settlement resolving that. The whole thing drove Gayheart close to sending herself to the afterlife, and, like we previously said, did her acting career no favors. And her reputation did not exactly get all sparkly when, in 2009, a video of her, her husband, and a beauty contestant in their birthday suits leaked. Demi Moore. There used to be a time when Demi Moore worship was very much expected. She was everywhere, and fans seemingly could not get enough of her. Ghosts, A Few Good Men, Indecent Proposal, and Charlie's Angels Full Throttle are a few of her more iconic movies. And she's a New York Times bestseller, too. Like most actresses, she began her career by modeling, eventually becoming the highest-paid actress in Hollywood. Demi Moore has been a sex symbol for much of her life, and has never had much trouble in making any list of the most beautiful women. But she had an ego the size of the gold hoard at Fort Knox, and was infamous for being a diva whose insane demands could make producers tear out their hair by the roots. And despite her undoubted talents, her films did not always make money, with less than half of the movies she starred in after Ghost being commercially successful. Very Good Girls was perhaps the lowest point of the career of this 3-time Golden Raspberry Award winner, with that movie taking home $6,940 at the box office. Demi Moore is currently 60 years old. While she remains active in movie land, her pull and skills are not what they were. With those looks mostly gone and more fresh-faced starlets out there, we will be seeing less and less of her. Josh Hartnett. Pearl Harbor, Black Hawk Down, 40 Days and 40 Nights, The Black Dahlia, and more are movies that had Josh Hartnett's grinning mug in them. The 44-year-old Minnesota native has been around the block, so to speak, and used to play football in high school, with an injury forcing him into the theater and then into movie land. Initially touted as the next great megastar and a viable replacement for the likes of Gary Cooper, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Tom Cruise, Hartnett has failed to live up to expectations, That's mainly because the desire is not there, with this fella repeatedly turning down offers to play Superman. He was also the first choice to play Batman in Batman Begins, but turned down the role, not wanting such superhero roles to define him for the rest of his life. The Oppenheimer star sees fame as uncomfortable and says that trying to stay at the top is a shortcut to unhappiness. In a 2014 interview with Details magazine, the actor recounts feeling like he did not deserve his fame and success. He said, "I was on the cover of every magazine. I couldn't really go anywhere. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I was alone. I didn't trust anyone." He digs more into that here.
It would be a disaster for my mental health.
Self-sabotage and getting on the bad side of industry veterans by turning down roles apart, Josh Hartnett's movies seldom make money. Less than 10 of the films he has starred in can be considered box office successes, and there's even a movie of his with a box office haul of $12,636. He has 2 movies due out this year, and whether they will turn out to be box office flops is anyone's guess. Click here to see the 10 most hated actors of 2023 and the reasons why. See you there.